Howdy folks, Dominic here, with a quick epilogue to the most recent episode. This is a part of the climate history of the late Old Kingdom that doesn't necessarily directly connect to the fall of the royal household, but it's an interesting feature of the archaeological evidence that is coming out in recent decades. It concerns rain, a period of frequent torrential downpours that afflicted the Nile Valley during the 4th, 5th, and 6th dynasties. There is a widespread public interest and a lot of misunderstanding about just how wet Old Kingdom Egypt actually was, so I've put together this short discussion to help introduce the topic. I hope you enjoy. Archaeologists working in northern Egypt have uncovered evidence for a period of torrential rainstorms and frequent downpours across several generations of history. One excavation at Giza has been working on the city of the pyramid builders at a site known commonly as Het el Ghurab, or the Wall of the Crow. Here, there seems to be sediment evidence for flash floods bringing mud and dirt down into the settlement area. These downpours seem to occur every 4 to 5 years, and looking at the stratigraphy of the site, archaeologists can observe that the city suffered major damage on, quote, at least 3 or 4 occasions. In some areas, sections of the site or settlement were even swept away, dislodged and cut through by water that flowed down from the plateau. These torrential downpours seem to have begun as early as the late 4th dynasty, and they probably afflicted Giza several times over the following centuries. Incidentally, this rainfall would also have come down upon the Sphinx, but that's a discussion for another day. Meanwhile, the nearby necropolis of Saqqara also shows evidence for rain damaging tombs of non-royal officials. Archaeologists working in the tombs of the 5th and 6th dynasties, between 2400 and 2200 BCE, have repeatedly found tombs that are flooded with rainwater and mud. This includes tombs that were sealed and intact, but the sarcophagi had been filled up with mud, leaving the skeletons embedded within. These cemeteries are much too high on the desert plateau for the water damage to come from the Nile. They have to be coming from the sky. And what's more, some of the mud brick mastabas in these cemeteries even show evidence for rain erosion and widespread destruction. A necropolis just west of the Step Pyramid, constructed during the 6th dynasty, includes a suite of mastabas that seem to have periodically suffered from floodwaters. The archaeologists have found that the ancients had to repeatedly build walls around their tombs in order to prevent the flood from entering into the monument. Sometimes this did not entirely work, and sections of the necropolis were destroyed and rebuilt. So it appears that the rains could be quite devastating, coming down in enormous tempests for which the builders were not entirely prepared. The problem was so widespread that we even see short-term changes in architecture. Traditionally, a mastaba tomb has a deep shaft running straight down into the ground, with a burial chamber right at the bottom. But in a situation where rain is periodically coming into the monument, that design is quite vulnerable to flooding. And so, during the late 5th and 6th dynasty, it seems that some tomb builders changed their designs to include more precautions. We find that burial chambers are no longer built at the bottom of the shaft. Instead, the shaft continues down for another meter or more below the floor of the burial. It seems like they are adding catchments or wells at the bottom of these shafts so that the water, when it flooded in, would not reach the burial chamber itself. These architectural adaptations are still being investigated. Saqqara is a massive necropolis, but it's an interesting phenomenon that hints at the challenges of tomb architecture in a new environmental condition. Surprisingly, we also have stories reflecting on this phenomenon. In the 5th dynasty, around 2400 BCE, a royal official named Kai-Mchenenet left a hieroglyph text describing his life and career. He also recorded a dramatic event that affected him when he was in the entourage of the king himself. The king in question was named Jedkara Izezi, and the official Chenenet was travelling in the royal barge alongside the king, sailing down the river. And he described the following, quote, "It happened that a storm and darkness arose, and I could not find a man who could follow the route on the river because of the storm. Nonetheless, His Majesty ordered that the voyage should continue, even on that day of desperately foul weather." End quote. Apparently, the king and his entourage were caught out in the open during the breaking of a tempest, and Chenenet successfully navigated them through the storm. Later, the king even rewarded his official for this excellent service. Quote, "His Majesty said to me, 'You have sailed the vessel to the delight of my person on account of it. You, Chenenet, are a true sailor, for you are not fearful of a great storm on the river. When the storm came up, it was you who saw to it that I, Jedkara, was saved and taken away from it." End quote. This is one of the few descriptions we get in Egyptian history of a large-scale tempest or storm that has a meaningful effect on the day-to-day. Heavy rains do still affect the north of the country reasonably frequently, and you can easily find videos on YouTube of the Giza Plateau being absolutely pummeled by rain. But it does seem like during the Old Kingdom there was a period of slightly more intense cloudbursts, which periodically flooded cemeteries, destroyed tombs or settlements, and forced changes in the architecture of burials. And on some occasions, the rain was so great that it became an event worthy of remembrance in the biographies of the ancients. These rainstorms probably didn't contribute meaningfully to the decline of the Old Kingdom. It was not washed away in a great flood or anything. But the evidence for these tempests might give us further information about the changes in the climate occurring at this time. Just as the Egyptians were dealing with a decline in the level of the Nile flood and an increase in desertification and aridification, they also had to deal with the occasional deluge pouring from the sky. It all sounds quite dramatic, kind of the opposite of a relaxing Nile cruise, but sometimes you just gotta bless the rains down in Africa.